Hi everybody, Robert here. Today we're going to be looking at how to do a countdown timer and to do it right. So I was looking around on the internet and I was kind of disappointed in all the different timers that I saw. A lot of them were linked just to the player character, which if you're playing a game, the countdown timer for the match or for the game should be in game mode, not on the character. And a lot of videos also use the tick function, which tick is the worst thing you could possibly use when you're creating your game because it kills the overhead, it kills the frame rate. Because with the tick function, it runs every single frame of the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a countdown timer that uses the game mode and pushes it straight to the widget blueprint. And then I'm going to show you three different ways, each having from least effective to the most efficient, of pushing that from the game mode into the widget blueprint and then showing that for the player. So here's a quick example of what the final one's going to look like. Time remaining at the top. It's going to have a countdown timer that you set inside the game mode, and that's all it is. The important thing here, though, is that it's done right. It's done efficiently. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is you should have Unreal Engine. Go ahead and start up your Unreal Engine. I'm using Unreal Engine version 5.3.2. And once you get that started, you should have a create screen here. So let's go Games, Blank. Leave it on Blueprint for now. I'm actually going to give this video in C++ as well in the next video after this one. And we'll do everything that we're doing in Blueprint. We'll also do it in C++. Leave everything else the same. Blueprint, give it a nice name. I think I'm going tutorial BP timer. Okay, you can see that file already exists, and that's when we're going to use it. It's a brand new file. So go after that, go ahead and hit create. And that'll bring you to this window right here, which this is exactly how it'll look if you're using Unreal Engine 5.0. Now, all this tutorial will also work in Unreal Engine 4 because it's just using basic functionality within the game. It's just doing it right. All right, for this, we only need 3 items. The first one is we need our own game mode. And you're almost always going to want to make your own game mode. So I right-clicked, Blueprint, and then I'm going to look down. I see game mode base here, but that's not the game mode I want. Game mode. I'm going to come down and I'm going to pick the one that's just game mode. And it inherits from game mode base, but it has additional functionality in it, like spawning and stuff like that. So if I'm building a game, I'd most likely go towards game mode and not just a base. So we'll select that one. We'll give it a name, BP game mode. BP stands for Blueprint, and it is a naming standard convention published by Unreal Engine. Okay. The next thing we need is we need a character. We're going to call that one BP character. And the last item we need is if we scroll all the way down the bottom, we need a user interface widget blueprint. All right. And you should see at the top here under the common section, user widget. And we're going to call it a widget blueprint. So that's WBP timer. And WBP, that's a standard naming convention as well from Unreal Engine. So naming things right is good because it just gives a good common practice. So if you were to go into another company or another programmer or a developer to take a look at your stuff, they understand what they're looking at. We'll go ahead and save all those. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump straight into our game mode. Okay, open another window. Let me bring this over for everybody. All right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set our player character in this version of the game mode. So we'll come down here, default pawn class, and we're going to set that to BP character. Okay, you can see it needs us to recompile, but first I'm going to hit the dot 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 save on compile on success only. So that way every time I hit the word compile, it's going to go ahead and save. You just saw the little asterisk next to the word game mode just disappeared. All right. Okay, we got our world here. It says untitled. Let's go ahead and give that a name. So we're going to save the current level. And this is all just setting everything up. World. We're just going to save everything right here in the root folder. If you have your own file folder structure, which I highly encourage that you do, save it like in your maps folder. Okay, so we have our world, and in the world, we need to go to world settings. If you don't see world settings on the right here, come up here to window, world settings, and that'll open up usually right here on the right side, right next to your details panel. Let's scroll down to game mode, and we're going to do a game mode override to the game mode that we just created. So blueprint game mode. All right, hit save. Now we're using a proper version of the game mode. Let's see, let's go to the event graph, get rid of tick, and we're going to use our own custom event. So let's create a custom event, add custom event. And this is basically like building a mini function in the window. You can create it as a function also, but in this case, it's just called a custom event. And we're going to call this timer. Now, in the timer, we're building a countdown. So we want to set the game to how many seconds we want it to run, and then we're going to count down from there. So let's go ahead and create that. Under variables, we're going to go match seconds. We're going to change that to a float, compile, and then we can go ahead and set the value over here on the right side. Let's start with 120. That'll give us 2 minutes as just a sample. All right. So that gives us the match seconds, but we need to know how much, and that's how much time there is at the start of the match, and we want to count down from there. So we know how much time is remaining as well. So hit the plus for another variable. We're going to call this remaining seconds. It should already be a float, and what we'll do is let's go ahead and set this. So I'm going to drag it out. I'm actually going to drop it right there on the timer pin, and that'll let us set it. Now, by default, it starts off at 0. So let's get the value for it. If we bring out match seconds, hit get, and if we plug that directly in, then it'll basically be 120 as remaining seconds nonstop. But there's another option we have. That's how long the duration we want the match to be. Just like, if you're talking a soccer game, you got 45-minute halves, and we want to tick down by how long the game has been going on. So we're going to use a built-in function called get seconds, get time seconds. There we go. Under utilities time, get time seconds. And what we do is, as the game progresses, once the game starts, this get time seconds automatically starts. And we know how long we want to go, so what we can do is we can subtract the two of these, minus sign, pick subtract, and we can subtract the two of these. So basically we're going from, we have 120 seconds, and as the game progresses, it's going to reduce that number, and then we can go ahead and save that into remaining seconds. Q, so I highlight these and I press Q to actually straighten out those lines. Having nice clean code, even blueprints, is really important for being able to track what's going on inside it. All right, so if our remaining seconds hits 0, we want to go ahead and quit the game, quit the match, or pause the game. We want to do something. So we're going to add a branch, which is like an if statement. So right click, I can type branch, or I can do the shortcut of holding B and left click, and that brings up a branch as well as a shortcut. Connect that up, and then as we said, if remaining seconds is less than or equal to 0, we want something to happen. So if that is true, in this case, we're going to quit. So I'll pull off of the true, and I'm going to say quit. Nice and easy. And who's going to quit? Well, let's find the specific player. We're going to get player controller. So whoever's controlling the first player that it finds, which in this case is index 0. So if you're playing by yourself on your computer, it will always be index 0. You will always be index 0. But let's say you're playing on the Switch or the Xbox and you have 4 people doing co-op play on the same system, then the index actually matters of 0, 1, 2, 3, like that. All right, so set up to where now once the time is 0, the remaining time, that will be true and it's going to quit the game. Easy enough. All right, let's continue on. Let's open up our widget blueprint. All right, in the widget blueprint, let's go ahead and set up something real simple here. Canvas, drag the canvas down. All right, and then from the canvas, I'm going to add a text box. And this text box is going to be where we actually show our time. So let's go ahead and give it a name, time, up in the top right corner. Press enter, and we're going to go ahead and set is variable true. And you can see it actually added the name time to the text block on the left side under the hierarchy. Okay, the text block, top left corner, not pretty, so let's go ahead and move it to the center of the screen by clicking on anchors, put it in the center, reset the position, that way it goes to the center, and we see our text X size is 100, so let's go with negative 50, and it's 30 for the height, so let's go with negative 15 just to get that centered. And then for text justification, we're going to come down to centered. And now when we look at it, we can zoom in and everything's nice and centered. And instead of just saying text block, we know it's going to be time. So let's go ahead and give it minutes, seconds, milliseconds. All right, so we got that set up. We got the game mode set up. Let's go to the character. Let's add this widget blueprint just to make sure everything is showing correctly. So in the game character, event graph, we'll get rid of these extras here. So we just have the begin play. Let's go at create widget, because we want to create the widget on this character. Okay, and then we called it a widget blueprint and timer. And then once we have created on this character, we need to add it to the viewport. So add to viewport, not to player screen, but to the viewport. All right, actually I'm going to break this bottom one for a second here. Select all three of these, hit Q to line everything up, and then I can just connect it back together. All right. Okay, if I hit play, it should work. Okay, there we go. The widget showed up right in the center with zeros. If you don't see the zeros here, then there's a high chance that you didn't set your world settings to the proper game mode, or you added the wrong widget to your player character here. Or under your game mode here, when you click on game mode here, you didn't add the correct character, blueprint character here. So those are three things to look at if you don't see those words in the center. All right, so we know that works. Let's go ahead and pretty it up a little bit. So let's go with a vertical box. Throw that on the canvas panel. Our time should go inside the vertical box. There we go. Let's add a spacer. Okay, and let's go with another text. Okay, so right now it shows the zeros at the top. I actually want the zeros to go under the spacer. I want the new text box to go up top. There we go. And we can actually see it in the top left corner here. Text block, times on the bottom. Look over here, text block, spacer, time block. Okay, select your vertical box. We're going to put this all back in the center. So anchors, top, center, reset position X. I'm going to go ahead and give this a size of 250, and that will let me do my negative position of half of that, so negative 125. All right, compile, and then clicking on the top text box, let's go ahead and keep it full, fill horizontally. We'll go with center align vertically. Text, let's go with match time remaining. And then we'll come down here, justification will be center. There we go. Now the match time remaining and the time itself are pretty close, so we got that spacer in there. We can come over here and we can adjust the X or the Y. So let's add about a 20 units to the Y value, and now we got a little bit of a gap in there. Now if we look at it, we should still have zeros when we hit play, but it should all be organized at the top and looking a little bit neater towards what we want to actually look like. Okay, so to test that the game mode is indeed taking the match seconds minus the time seconds elapsed and giving us remaining seconds, we're going to test it. So in the widget blueprint, this is the first way of three that we're going to look at here, and this is the most inefficient way of doing it because this is going to use tick, or this is going to update every tick. It's not going to use tick, but it's going to update every tick in the game, whether the value is changed or not. All right, so from game mode, let's call our function event begin play, and we're going to set a timer. Set timer by function name, and that function is the timer that we just created down below. So function name is timer. Let's go ahead and go with 0.1. Later on, we'll try a different value here to be a little bit more efficient. And we want this to go ahead and loop, so check the looping. If you forget this one here, so I'm going to run one time, and that kind of defeats the point of what we're creating. So every 0.01 seconds, it's going to run the timer here to check the remaining seconds and give us an update of the remaining seconds. Now, get time seconds always runs. Whether you're running it in the function or not, it's always running. That's how we're able to get the accurate time data. So from widget blueprint, our time variable, our time text box, we're going to come down here to text, zeros, and we're going to click on bind, create binding. This is the slowest way, the most efficient way, but it's the easiest way to set up. So if you just need a quick fix, this will work, but it's not the most efficient way. All right, from here, we're going to cast to BP game mode. Okay, the object going in is get game mode, and what that'll do is that'll return the current version of the game mode running for that player or on that level. Okay, from there we know BP game mode has these variables over here. So let's go ahead from as BP game mode, let's go ahead and grab that. Get remaining seconds. All right, And then from there, we can actually run this straight in. Now, it's not going to look pretty, but we're just going to test it just to make sure it works. All right, so we hit play, and boom, it went from 120 seconds, and now it's basically counting down the seconds with a decimal value since this is a float. One thing we can do to make this a little prettier is let's go ahead and take away that to text, and we can say time seconds to string. Now, if you notice, so we're going to a string, but the return value is a text value, and that's going to matter later on as well. So we're going to run up here. It'll do the automatic conversion for us. We don't have to worry about it. So in string, returning a text value. Now, if we look at it, it gives us seconds, or minutes, seconds, and milliseconds as a decimal value, or tenths of a second, hundredths of a second as well. All right. So we know the numbers work from Gamemode. It's counting down, and we can plug it into our designer, into our number value there. So we know it works. All right. So that's a good step. However, as mentioned, you could keep this as your final solution, but of the three solutions we're looking at, this is the least effective one. Okay, so let's go ahead and go with a more effective one here. So I'm going to go ahead and close Get Timing Text, come over to Designer, and I'm actually going to the binding spot. I'm going to remove that binding. Come back to the graph. I'm going to delete Get Time Text because we don't. So we saw how to do it. It was super easy to set up, but it's not how we want to stick with it. Okay. Now in the Gamemode, we actually want to do the calculations over here. So let me look at my notes here. Okay, so we want to take our remaining seconds. Okay, so get remaining seconds. And what we're going to do is we're going to convert this into minutes and seconds ourselves. That way we don't have to look at the milliseconds. Okay, so to get seconds, you just divide by 60. And that'll give us the number of seconds, or number of minutes. To get the number of seconds, pull this off, and we're going to use the modulo, which is a percent sign, modulo of a float value, and we're going to say 60. And what modulo does is it's going to divide the number of seconds, and any whole numbers it's going to get rid of, and it's just going to give us the remainder. So whatever is that fraction of, it's going to give us the remainder of that. So if we have a minute and 59 seconds, 1 minute is a whole value. It'll only give us back that 59 seconds. So that gives us our minutes and our seconds. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to append these together. So we'll do append. Append means to combine. So scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to do it with some strings. We have to go from float to strings. If I drag it over, it'll automatically do the conversion for us. Okay. And then from here, we need to go to text, because as we looked at when we look at the timer, the output value going into the time needs to be a text value. So let's add another variable, and we'll call this remaining time as text. Change the type to text. I'm going to drag this out there and set it. Okay, and what I can do is I can actually run straight into that, and it'll do a nice little conversion. Now we want to set it, if we look at our branch, anytime the remaining seconds is greater than 0, then it's going to come out the false. So we want to plug the false down here so it updates the time as long as it's greater than 0. All right. So remaining time as seconds. Let's go over here to our widget blueprint now that we have a variable called remaining time as seconds. And we're going to come here to the designer. In the text field, actually, on the graph, we need to go to not pre-construct. We'll move that one. Not event tick. We want event construct. If you accidentally delete event construct, you could just bring it right back in. Event construct. Okay, so this is essentially begin play for a widget blueprint. And we're going to pull off here. We're going to get the game mode. Cast to BP game mode. We're going to get the game mode. Get game mode. Okay, let's highlight these, press Q, straighten them out. Let's move this over a little bit, make it look cleaner. All right, from BP game mode, we want to set it as a reference. So I'm going to pull out of there. I'm going to promote it to a variable. Okay, and that's basically going to save a copy of our game mode, so we don't have to keep referencing to it or casting to it. I'm going to rename it under variable name. I'm going to call this game mode ref. All right, there we go. And from the game mode ref, I want to go ahead and look at the pull out the remaining time as text. We're going to get it. All right, so now we have a value. And what we can do is we can update time based on this. So we'll get time down here, get time, and we're going to set text. And you want the set text under widget, set text with the word text in parentheses as well. Okay, bring that up. Tie this into there. I guess I could bring that up a little bit. That way it's not covering it up. Okay, so we're updating the time. So the time field, we're going to update the text with whatever time text is remaining. And I told you there's something strange here in the game mode. So when we look at game mode, how we're doing it, how we're appending them together. You know what? Let's add a pin here, and we'll reconnect this one there. Hold Alt and click on the center one, and let's add a colon. Okay, that way we split our minutes and seconds there. Append it all back together. Now, when we look at our widget blueprint, it should be updating the text with our minutes and seconds, but it's going to look a little strange. And it does definitely look strange because it's invisible. Okay, let's see what we did here. Okay. Yes. So in the designer, after we've set this up in the designer, we want to come down, bind, and now we have a game mode reference. That's one thing we didn't have before. Before we had to do create binding, but this time, since we're linking the graph mode, since we're linking the game mode and getting the time, setting the text, we can come up here and designer, have your time selected, and when you click bind, you'll have game mode reference, remaining time as text. Okay, compile. Now when we hit play, we should be able to see it. It should look a little strange, and we don't. All right, what did I do not right? There, yep. Remaining time as text, widget blueprint, graph, set text, okay. With the time, remaining time, is the game mode still set? Right, one set there. Okay, so this is a good opportunity for us to troubleshoot here. All right, remaining time here. Game mode reference. Blueprint game mode. Okay, we're updating the timer. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. Set. Yep, we're setting all the right values. Remaining time as text. In the graph, BP game mode, as game mode on the event construct. We got our reference. Okay, connected. Okay. In the designer, move binding, remaining time as text. Did I not? Compile? All right, so figure that one out. Silly mistake on my part here. So we have our text box. We'll go to the graph. We just need to set the game mode reference. That's it. What was happening is when I had the previous value there, I was actually overriding our text there. So actually, we don't need that. That's actually for later. So get the game mode. Come back to the designer. Have that there. Bind game mode reference remaining time as text. Hit play, and it looks kind of funny. It looks like we got 1 minute and showing the fraction of a minute and showing the seconds there and the fraction of the seconds. So what we could do is in the game mode, when we're converting to string, there's actually a special option we can use in here. So we'll delete those. And before we append over, we can actually adjust our values. So here we want to text float. And what this does is it gives us a little drop down. So we can minimal digits. We want 2 places of whole numbers, and we want 0 decimal values. Shrink that down, copy paste, bring that together. Okay, and then here we'll just go back to our append, and now we're going from a text to a string, back to a text, but that's because text does not actually have an append feature in C++. All right, so come back out here to set. Now, when we look at our value, it shows us nice numbers, 2 minutes and 56 seconds. All right, so this is the second way to do it. So basically, we manually set up the value that we want. We make sure it shows as text. We come to the widget blueprint timer graph. We have to create a game mode reference here. And in the designer, we're actually linking to a reference property. So if you look, it says properties. We're looking to one of the variables in game mode, in this case, remaining time as text. All right, time to look at the final version. The final version is, the code's almost essentially there, but this one's going to be using event dispatchers. So here in game mode, every time we want to update the time, we're going to tell the widget blueprint, update now. So instead of updating every frame or every tick like the previous examples, it's going to update when we want to update it. So from the branch, false, set, we're setting the time. From there, we want to say update now. So an event dispatcher on the left side here, come down, add an event dispatcher, and we're going to call this update time. Okay, bring it out. We are going to call it, and you know it's being called. So when this dispatcher is called, it's going to send out a message to everywhere else in the program. And if somebody's listening for this particular message called update time, that item is going to execute something. That's all we have to do for the game mode. Okay, so it's going to blast out update time. We come over here to the widget blueprint timer, and we're going to tell this one, listen for it. So select on your time. We're going to remove our binding because we don't want any bindings on here. We're going to do this by custom event. So click on your graph. Okay, so like before, we have our reference. Now we want to, from here, game mode reference, we're going to bind event to update time. There we go. And you can see it has the funny little symbol there. It's actually listening. So this one's actually listening for that event to occur. Now, game mode reference, I'm setting it here, and then I'm pulling off it again. What I could have done is I could have come over here. I could get, and I could plug it in. Also, that would do the exact same thing. In this case, I'm just using the pin because it's very, very close. So we'll stick with that way. Now, from here, from the event, we want to make a custom event. And that custom event is going to trigger. So when this occurs, the event's going to trigger, and it's going to go back, and it's going to make this custom event then go. In my mind, it also almost should make sense that it would go on this side. So when this event occurs, it goes here. But this is the way they've drawn it. So when this receives a notification that a dispatch has been called for update time, it's going to go down here and execute this piece here. For this piece here, we want to get our time. We want to update. We want to set text with that little text in parentheses, right? It's going to come off of our dispatch here, custom function. All right, bring that up. And then what we're going to do is from game mode, so I could either call in get game mode and run off that, or I could use this node here, or I could use this node here. I'm going to pull off this one. Get remaining time as text and plug it in here. All right. Now that we got that set up, let's go ahead and give it a play. And we can see the timing starts ticking. This is the third and most efficient way of calling an update for your user interface. So in this, we looked at 3 different methods. The first method of creating a timer is we looked at binding to the user interface directly by calling from the game mode and binding directly to the time text variable. The second method was we called in, we made a reference to our game mode, and then we just said that every time or every frame, basically we would just go ahead and update our set time value by binding to the property not creating a binding itself. And then the third final way is we made an event dispatch just by adding an event dispatch here, attaching it to our set time, and then in here we set up listen to it and then what happens when it occurs, and we're going to update our text from that. And this is the most efficient way and the way that I recommend doing it. Now in the next video we're actually going to build all this game blueprint information inside Visual Studio as a C++. The timer will be much more simplified, and then the blueprint character will be the same. So join me on the next video. If you like this one, then hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. Thanks.